Rashad Amos simply must break out, amongst others, for Ole Miss to make the playoff run that we're all hoping for.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, a former staff member at Ole Miss and a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports. Today on the show, we talk about three players, and specifically Rashad Amos, who need to break through for Ole Miss to maximize their season. Rashad Amos, Juice Wells, and Chris Hardy will go a long way to determining whether or not Ole Miss is just very good this season or elite, and I will tell you why. This is the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the everydayers who make the show what it is. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sport stops sporting the way we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster of bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Really interesting stuff. And I think for Ole Miss to get to the level that all Ole Miss fans are hoping that Ole Miss gets to, Rashad Amos is the primary player that needs to break out in 2024. And I don't mean he needs to be Quinshon Judkins. I'm not saying that. He needs to break out in a way to where he makes Ulysses Bentley the fourth better, to where he makes Henry Parrish better, that he helps out Tre Harris, that he helps out Deion Smith, Juice Wells, Caden Priestcorn, Jackson Dart. Him working at an efficiently high level is going to help out those skilled players, especially running behind that offensive line. You know, looking at Rashad Amos at Miami of Ohio, he had 210 carries a year ago, a little over 1,000 yards, had 13 touchdowns, ran for about 200 yards in the Cure Bowl in Orlando last year. That's what this picture is from. They played in the rain. He had a really good game, and he's somebody that is kind of that thumper. And I talked about during the transfer portal, going back to December into the spring portal and all of that, that Ole Miss needed to find a thumper. That was the piece that was missing, because we always talked about replacing Quinshon Judkins in the aggregate. Does everybody remember that? Well, the aggregate that he carries is short yardage and being that thumper type running back. Now, the difference between him and Quinshon Judkins is Rashad Amos might be a little bit faster than Quinshon. Quinshon was really good in that first 10 yards, and then he slowed down pretty much exponentially after that. He's not somebody that was going to break a big one, but he was going to consistently get 6, 7, 8 yards in a carry. Rashad Amos can break a long one, and he's got Derrick Henry-like stiff arm highlights that has been on YouTube for a while. So anybody go to YouTube and look up Rashad Amos, and this is a running back that can help Ole Miss, especially at the end of the game. He is somebody that is going to make it a little bit easier for the other skill players in Ole Miss offense, because people aren't going to want to tackle him. In the fourth quarter, he is going to have that Snoop Conner role. Simple as that. He's going to have the Snoop Conner role to where he's wearing on a tired defense. He's 230 pounds. In the fourth quarter, he could be difficult to deal with. Now, Kevin Smith at Ole Miss goes with the hot hand. If Rashad Amos turns out to be the hot hand, you'll see him earlier in the game. But the way it's set up is for Ulysses Bentley the fourth and Henry Parrish to kind of tag team it through the first three quarters and then hand it off to Rashad Amos. That's the way it looks if you want to look at what history is at Ole Miss. And what this is going to do is give you that offense that is kind of really slow down, because I did mention that this is the first year that in 2020 and 2021, Ole Miss was go. It was all gas, no brakes, just put it on the floor. It's like playing Mario Kart going around the track, okay? It was completely all net gas, no brakes, because Ole Miss needed to do that because their defense was not very good. Then in 2022, it changed to where it was still all gas, but it was more run-based as opposed to what Matt Corral did. 2023 was a little bit of a mixture, kind of in the area of what those 2021 and 2020 offenses were like. But, and this is honestly no joke, this may be the first year with this defense that Ole Miss is able to kind of take the air out of the football in the fourth quarter. And with a guy like Rashad Amos, he's going to help out the defense. He's going to help out the Ole Miss skill players. He's going to remove their ability to double coverage Tre Harris in the fourth quarter because they're going to have to move people into the box. They're not going to be able to just stop it with 7 with the way the Ole Miss offense is set up. And because of that, Ole Miss might be more effective in the fourth quarter in the passing game than we're even expecting. See, Rashad Amos is the key to a lot of stuff. And not the least bit of it is being that thumper running back in the fourth quarter that could be a problem for the defense. The defense is tired. They just don't want to tackle him. He's doing that. But he's also going to open up the outside to where you have to bring a safety down, which means you can't double team one of the outside wide receivers, which also means the inside wide receivers and tight ends have a chance at single coverage. You see how the offense gets exponentially more explosive with Rashad Amos being a threat. Ulysses Bentley is going to be a threat. Henry Parrish is going to be a threat. If you look at their stats over the course of the season, Ulysses Bentley, 95 carries, 540 yards, 4 touchdowns. Nearly 6 yards per carry for Ulysses Bentley. He had some big games. He was the running back that should get the credit against Arkansas. He should get the credit against Vanderbilt. He should get the credit against LSU. Ulysses Bentley actually, to only have 540 yards, did a lot of heavy lifting a year ago. But he is a 210-pound back. He is a guy that runs really hard, and you will see him in the game in short yardage positions because he runs really hard, but he's not the thumper. You need the thumper, so he's not necessarily in the game for that. Ole Miss got a transfer back from Henry Parrish Jr. He had 100 carries, 625 yards, 6 touchdowns to lead the Miami Hurricanes in rushing a year ago. He is transferring back to Kevin Smith and the Ole Miss offense, and he's going to be a legit player as well. But he is not a thumper. He's actually probably a little bit smaller than Ulysses Bentley IV. So Rashad Amos, in all of his size, plays an important role in this offense. And that means you can't really necessarily take a breath because at any moment they could put this guy into the game and he could change everything. It's kind of like when Auburn had Brandon Jacobs back in the day, or Derrick Henry was at Alabama. And I'm not calling him elite type running backs, but the sense of dread of what these players are on the football field and a 180-pound defensive back having to tackle a 230-pound running back, that's problematic in the fourth quarter because they're tired. They want to go home. And odds are they should be losing at that time as well. That's the other key to this. In the fourth quarter, when he's supposed to be doing his work, is a time that Ole Miss should be up by 2 or 3 scores, and Ole Miss is taking the air out of the game. Ole Miss in the past has needed tempo for their offense to be super successful because, as we've explained, 90% of the offense is actually fairly simple. There's 10% Lane Kiffin shot plays, but 90% of the offense is pretty simple because it has to be. The faster you go, the more simple the offense has to be. And Ole Miss wants to go lightning fast. And because of that, they need tempo for the offense to be at its highest level. Well, they've got the talent and the skill right now to where they should be able to line up and run inside zone, run power, run counter with Rashad Amos in the fourth quarter with the other team knowing that it's coming, and it's not going to matter that much. And that kind of makes me excited. This is the reason you can hear in the tone of my voice. Rashad Amos breaking out in 2024, that's a really good sign for Ole Miss football. If you want Ole Miss football to be what we all want Ole Miss football to be, root for Rashad Amos. Not necessarily to start, but to be really effective and to make the other players around him better. Because if he is operating at a full level, he is going to make the receivers better, Jackson Dart better, and the other running backs. Really big situation there. Thanks again for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day. Rashad Amos will be massive this year, but what Juice Wells can provide will take the Ole Miss offense from great to elite. We'll tell you about that in just a second. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But when the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games. And the sports aren't sportsing the way we want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up any bets I want anytime I am in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking all customers up with a booster of bonus daily. So maybe you can bet on the Ole Miss Rebels over-under on wins, which currently sets at 9.5. Or maybe you're interested in Ole Miss being minus 122 for the college football playoff. Or maybe, just maybe, you want to get granular with it and go with Jackson Dart at plus 1,500 to win the Heisman Trophy. Maybe that is your flavor. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head out over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, it's the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all of that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you each and every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And there's still time to join the Grove Collective and help Ole Miss football be elite. You can go to thegrovecollective.com and join today. So we talked about Rashad Amos, and he's a massive piece in Ole Miss's offense. I don't think people even understand exactly what he can do to the other skill players and how he affects space against the defense. And we're going to talk about that as we move into the season. We have 2 months of preseason to talk about it. We'll get to it. Also, by the way, have it set up to the middle of August. We're going to have John Forcade on the show to start his pre-analysis of Ole Miss football. Bill Flowers is going to start coming by in August as well. We're getting close. Basically, we are there. A week from now, we'll already be talking about what Lane Kiffin, Jackson Dart, Jared Ivey, and Tre Harris said, which, by the way, I am all for that lineup. That was the one that Michael Borky predicted from the Rebel Report, and good for him. I agree. Jackson Dart, Tre Harris, fantastic. I personally would have taken J.J. Pegues just because J.J.'s a hometown guy from Oxford, but Jared Ivey, I see that 100%. He has his own podcast and all that as well. So congratulations to them. 1 week away, we're in the heart of it and what's going on. But the second player that needs to break out for Ole Miss to be a playoff level team and break out the way that we expect them to this year is Juice Wells. And Juice Wells, in my opinion, is kind of the prototypical slot wide receivers, which is kind of bad news if you think about it for Jordan Watkins. But Juice Wells came into 2022. He was 68, 928 yards, 6 touchdowns. He came into last season, pretty much everybody thinking he was the top wide receiver in the whole Southeastern Conference. He got injured. He had to have surgery. South Carolina fans started losing their mind, and they still lose their mind thinking about Juice Wells, to the point where I'm not sure that South Carolina wants to beat us or Juice Wells whenever Ole Miss goes to Williams-Brice. But I digress. This guy is a prototypical slot wide receiver and is very good with the ball in his hands. He's one of the better ones in the entire conference at that. And whenever you think about that, you have to remember what is going on and what I'm talking about. With Rashad Amos, Juice Wells, and we're going to move over to the defensive side of the ball in just a minute. But Juice Wells in the middle of the field with the Rashad Amos, the number one player graded off of PFF last year against single coverage, and this is important, was Tre Harris. So it became an important thing through the transfer portal and through recruiting and however you could acquire talent to figure out a way to make it hard to double Tre Harris. Football is a really simple game. It just is. We like to overcomplicate it, but it's a really simple game. The goal is to take double teams away from Tre Harris because he's the number one graded player against single coverage in all of college football. He is potentially the best wide receiver in college football, which means if there's going to be a double team, he is going to see it. So Ole Miss did something interesting. And first of all, they got a transfer from Juice Wells. Juice Wells, like I said, in 2022, had 68 catches, 920 yards, 6 touchdowns. Really good football player. And he is somebody that in the slot position, I do think he is going to end up starting in the slot position, by the way, even over Jordan Watkins. I think Jordan Watkins and Deion Smith is actually the one that's going to be fighting it out for the other wide receiver. But I do think that Juice Wells is going to perform at a high level. At the Manning Passing Academy, Jackson Dart's eyes just kind of lit up talking about Juice Wells. And because of that, you kind of know what he's thinking. Yeah, I can see a situation in Ole Miss's offense to where the slot side of the formation is towards Tre Harris, to where it's kind of a pick your poison situation, to where if you want to play man, you have Juice Wells, you have Tre Harris, and who are you going to double? Because PFF has called Juice Wells another Dez Bryant, and that blows my mind. He's not the size as far as height as Dez Bryant, but he's a really, really good athlete, and he can physically take you off the football. So if you put him on the same side of the field with Tre Harris, that is going to put the defense in a compromising position. Then when you look at Caden Prieskorn and then maybe Deion Smith on the other side, or Jordan Watkins on the other side, it makes it to where the defense's real only hope to deal with this Ole Miss offense, and this is the honest to goodness truth, the only hope they have is to fool the quarterback. They're going to have to go through disguises because you're going to have to mix up who's getting doubled from plays. And you got to hope that Jackson Dart misses a read and misses a time when Tre Harris is the guy that is single coverage matched up. He's not going and putting the football in the right place. That is what the defense has to hope. And that is what Lane Kiffin has built by bringing Juice Wells into the offense. And whenever you look at this, I love Jordan Watkins. Jordan Watkins is one of my favorite players at Ole Miss. He is the most underrated player on Ole Miss's roster. He is somebody that played as a punt returner and a receiver with a broken hand a year ago. Jordan Watkins deserves everybody's admiration and respect. And then I just said that I think Juice Wells is going to start at the slot receiver. Ole Miss has 4 starting level wide receivers. Honestly, more than that, but we're just going to go with 4 for 3 positions. It's going to come down to whether or not Deion Smith picks up the playbook. I genuinely think against Furman, the 3 wide receivers is going to be Tre Harris, Juice Wells, and Jordan Watkins. I am genuinely in a mind of thinking that. But that doesn't mean that's not going to change as the season moves on. As everything, once Ole Miss gets to LSU, this offense can look completely different as the offense that comes out against the Furman Paladins. Really interesting type stuff, and I think the offense has a chance to be unbelievably explosive with the breakout of Juice Wells and Rashad Amos. 2 transfers that are probably the major players of non-returners that are coming back. Thanks again for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. Princely Amanuel injury recovery is expected to go into the season, which makes Chris Hardy the most critical of critical pieces defensively. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Be part of history. Now, the third player, I wanted to do a defensive player intentionally. And because of that, I think it's going to be a major part for Ole Miss in 2024. My first inclination is the breakout player is Chris Pupal. I think he is a massive player at linebacker, and how he does behind that defensive line is going to be a major cog in this Ole Miss defense in 2024. But the problem with that is he's a good player. He's needed, and all of this stuff is true. I don't know if that's the key at the moment. And Princely Amamielin had to have surgery right after spring practice. Now, he didn't have surgery during spring practice, so that should tell you exactly how they feel about it. But after it, they went in there and cleaned some stuff up, and he is going through recovery and things like that. Amamielin is a super athlete. His bend and his athleticism is absolutely off the charts. I mean, it's just no way that you can deal with it, honestly. But he is going to be out for probably the better part of maybe the first 3 games. The thing that I've heard and read online and stuff, trying to find stuff about Princely Amamielin, and we all know that getting injury news is one step besides impossible. But Princely Amamielin, if they're true, if those reporters are telling the truth, it's going to go into the season. And, by the time we go down to Baton Rouge, he's going to be good to go and everything's going to be fine. But by the time we go to Wake Forest, who knows? So that's my point there. What do we have defensively that is going to make everything go to where the defense can get a lot better and it's not starting as a defensive unit when Princely Amamielin comes back? You don't want a situation to where 5 weeks into the season, that's the point where you're starting to grow as a defensive unit. You need a jack that is a legit player that can cause fear and all of that stuff. And I think that Chris Hardy is the guy to do that. He's from Jacksonville State, had 61 tackles, 16 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks, and 4 quarterback hurries a year ago. Now, Ole Miss, other players lined up. It's not a situation to where he's kind of the one and done. And honestly, I would be okay with the kid from Pahokee playing the jack position, or TJ Dudley over there in the early part of the season. Ole Miss defensively has more depth than they've ever had. And that's important. I think in the age of modern college football, you don't have a starting 11. You have a starting 22 with the advent of tempo and stuff like that. You need 22 players to where there's not that much of a drop-off between the top level and the next level. If you have that, it could work. Chris Hardy is going to step in for Princely Amamielin next to Walter Nolan, next to J.J. Pegues, next to Jared Ivey, with Akello Stone and Xavion Harris backing him up, with Kamarion Franklin over at the strong side defensive end. You can see the defensive line is in really good shape. So it's important to where those first 3 games worth of reps, they're not wasted. You get a nice picture of how it's going to look when Princely gets back, and you can have that with Chris Hardy. This is a guy that's a really good athlete. He's going to get out there. I think he has a lot of similar traits to Isaac Ukwu. And I watched the Penn State game in the Ole Miss takeover day on the SEC network the other day. And Isaac Ukwu, he's just a solid player. It just is. You just watch him line up and watch him play. He just goes about his business and does it at a high level. I think Chris Hardy is going to do that plus some. This is a guy that was all Conference USA when he was there. Now there's going to be a big jump to go into the SEC, but we're not asking that much. And you might have a situation when Princely Amamielin comes back that now you have somebody that can spell him and you have those high reps going at it, and the defense can continue to take a step forward. I talk all the time. And this is for Princely Amamielin as much as it is Chris Hardy, okay? Ole Miss desperately needs another thing for you to watch, and something that you're probably going to see in the first couple of weeks, is double teams being forced on Walter Nolan and J.J. Pegues, to where Jared Ivey and Chris Hardy or Princely Amamielin, they're coming off single coverage. If that happens, they will be able to hunt. Princely Amamielin is going to win more times than he's not. Chris Hardy's going to win more times than he's not. And we've seen what Jared Ivey can do over the course of a game whenever he's motivated and ready to go as well. The defensive line is in a position to coalesce and be a really good unit, potentially the strength of the entire team. these first 4 games, when Chris Hardy is lining up in that jack position and lining up on that defensive line, is a majorly important thing. Pete Golding has made his bones over the years, making defensive linemen get play, especially defensive end, going all the way back to Marcus Davenport with UTSA, all the way forward to Will Anderson and all of that. The defensive lineman, especially the defensive end, he does a decent job of scheming up against protection to get them up the field. When you take on man corners, which they did, they brought in Tre Amos and Isaiah Hamilton, man covered corners that are going to press and make the windows even smaller, with ball hawks playing the safety position. Those defensive linemen, and especially Chris Hardy, what he does in those early games are going to be massively important, and eventually Princely Amon Mielen. That is why these 3 players are the key to Ole Miss making it to where we all want them to be. We all want them to be in the playoff, but to get there, they need some breakouts from certain players that nobody's been talking about. And I think Rashad Amos, Juice Wells, and Chris Hardy kind of fit that bill. Thanks again for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen. We have the most perspective surrounding Ole Miss sports, and it's one of the many reasons why we're the number 1 Ole Miss podcast out there, and thank you for that. But for your second listen, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. And for those of you on YouTube, we will send you there right now. Last night, a video with Phil Steele is on the website. We'll see you tomorrow. Hotty toddy, everyone.